Hi, welcome to my studio. My name is Miss Beth, and for the next few weeks we're going to be discussing art done during a particular period in time. That time was the Impressionist period, and I will be introducing you to several artists that somewhat launched a new way of thinking about art. But before I introduce you to them, there's someone pretty special to me I'd like to introduce you to. He's actually a little drop of paint. His name is Gatsby, and if he's here, we'll find him in that can of paint. Gatsby? Gatsby, are you there?
I'm right here, Miss Beth.
Hi, Gatsby. Gatsby, I'd like to introduce you to my students. Students, this is who I was talking about. This is Gatsby.
Hi, new friends. Miss Beth, you know I love art history. What are you teaching about today?
I'm glad you asked. We're talking about the Impressionist period.
Whoa, that's a big word.
It is. Why don't you say it with me?
Impressionist.
Impressionist. Very good.
Was it a long time ago?
It was a pretty long time ago. It was about 150 years ago.
That was a long time ago. Probably before you were born.
Definitely before I was born, Gatsby. Would you like to learn a little bit more about it?
Can I chill out in my paint can and listen?
Certainly you can. And Gatsby, have I got a story for you.
It's story time!
The Impressionist period began in the city of Paris, France. But it didn't just happen overnight. There were events that led up to this big change in the way we see art today. The changes actually happened because of a particular school that was there. It was a school that had been there for over 200 years. It was called the École des Beaux-Arts. In English, that would be the School of Fine Arts. They had been around for hundreds of years. And in order to be a student there, you had to be like the greatest, best artist ever. And they didn't let just anybody in. You had to kind of prove that you could do it. So the students who were there were incredible artists. But the school kind of dictated what they thought good art was and what bad art was. And that's how they taught the students. And so the students, from the time they got there, were told things like, make sure when you're putting the paint on the canvas that you don't show any brush strokes. Make sure when you're blending the paints that you blend them nice and smooth. Make sure you show plenty of detail. But probably the most important thing that the school taught the students was that their artwork needed to be intellectually challenging. In other words, the teachers were teaching the students, you need to paint something that makes people think and ponder. Of course, you can imagine the students were constantly thinking, okay, what can I paint that would make people think and ponder? Well, of course, the school had an idea about that too. And they constantly were telling the students what they could paint and what they couldn't paint, what was good art and what was bad art. And so the students worked very hard to try to please their teachers. Once a year, the school had an art show. They called it the Académie des Beaux-Arts. Again, in English, that would be the Academy of Fine Arts. And the students could pick their very best piece to bring. And if the teachers felt like it was worthy, in other words, didn't show any brush strokes, the colors were well blended and was intellectually challenging, they would allow the students to display so that other students and teachers could see their artwork. I'd like to give you an example of some of those themes that the Academy really, really liked. So what I did is I went and I looked up a few of their favorite pieces, of the Academy's favorite pieces, the ones that they thought showed all these techniques and all these themes they were looking for. And let's take a look at a few of them. One of the things that the school loved to see when it came to artwork was when students would paint pictures of war or war heroes. I've got a great example. This painting right here was submitted in 1810 to an art competition there at the school. It's called Napoleon in Berlin. It was so important to the French to be able to show this because it was an important time in history for them. Napoleon had just conquered Prussia, and he's riding into the great city of Berlin to take it over. As you see in this painting, done by Charles Maynier, the colors are beautifully blended. That was one of the things that the school was looking for. It also has a lot of detail. Look at all the people that have crowded around Napoleon. But if you've noticed, they don't get too close. In fact, look at some of their faces. They actually don't show much expression at all. Some of them are just staring blankly. And then have you noticed that some of them have their hands up raised to Napoleon? I wondered what was going on in this picture. Were the people raising their hands in reverence to the great Napoleon, even though he had just conquered their city? Or maybe they were a little afraid of him, a little apprehensive. In fact, you can see right here where one lady's actually turned her back on Napoleon and is kind of holding on to a man, maybe that's her husband, for protection. This was the perfect type of picture that the school was looking for. It was about war. It showed France being victorious. It had a lot of detail. We, of course, didn't see any brush strokes in it. All the colors are blended in so beautifully. This was a great example of a war scene and a war hero. Not only was the school looking for pictures about the war and war heroes, they were also looking for portraits. Do you know what a portrait is? Right. It's a painting of a person. Let me show you a few that the school thought were just wonderful. This one right here is called Mademoiselle de Quincy. It was painted by a man named Jean-Marc Nadier in 1738. Boy, the school loved this one. You can't see any brush strokes in it at all. Look how smooth her skin is on her face and on her neck and her hands. She's very elegant. But there is a little commotion going on in this picture. I don't know if you noticed. On one hand, she has a beautiful parrot. But have you noticed what's going on underneath her other hand? They say that's man's best friend. It looks like her pet dog. But I don't think he's liking that bird too much. Look at his face. Well, the salon loved this because the colors are blended beautifully. And they have a lot of detail. Look how shiny her dress is. And look at all the detail in the flowers that she wears like a sash. They thought this painting was fabulous. Here's another portrait that the school really, really liked. It's painted of a man named Christophe Wildebold Gluck. That's kind of a crazy name, isn't it? The artist's name was Joseph Siffred Duplessis. He was great at painting detail. Look at all the detail on Mr. Gluck. He's got a shiny jacket, and it really shines. Look at all the wrinkles in the arms and in the lapel. The thing I really like is looking at the lace around his wrist. It looks soft, like you could almost touch the softness of it. Let me ask you a question about this one. This man, do you think he works inside or outside? And I'm not talking about looking at how he's dressed. Look at his hands. His hands are light colored and they're so smooth. The artist was excellent at not showing any brush strokes. I would guess that this man probably has an inside job because of how the artist painted him. So we've learned so far that the school liked war scenes or war heroes. They liked pictures of people, especially rich people, royalty. But something else that they were looking for when they were teaching their students about what to paint were pictures of Bible scenes. I've got a few that I want to show you. This one right here is called, well, I'm not going to tell you what it's called. I'm going to see if you can figure it out for yourself. Let's look at it a little closer. We see God. God has come down. He's got kind of a stern face. He's accompanied by two very cute little angels. And he's sitting on a great big powerful cloud. And he's looking at a man. But that man has his hand up. It's almost like he's hiding from God. Maybe he's ashamed. And then if you look along the ground, especially underneath God, you see another man. He looks like he has a little bit of a gray tint to his skin. At first I thought it was because he was laying underneath that cloud that God is on. But then I realized I don't think it's because he's in the shadow. I think something has happened. Can you tell what story this is of the Bible? Well, if you guess the story of Cain and Abel, you're right. The name of this piece is Cain Reprimanded After the Murder of Abel. It was done by an artist named Noel Coipel in 1667. Of course, the Salon loved it because they did like Bible scenes so well. But Coipel was able to blend the colors beautifully. Look at how the robe of God just shines. Like there's a very bright light shining on him. It even shines on those little angels, almost brighter than it's shining on God. There's a lot of details in the face and the hand of Cain. And this is one Bible story that the school thought was wonderfully painted. Here's another Bible scene. This is called The Adoration of the Nativity by Francois Boucher. It was submitted to the art show in 1750. Again, look how important light is in this painting. It's kind of coming from the ceiling, and it's shining right down on somebody very special. Baby Jesus. People have gathered around to see the new baby. Even the animals have gathered around. Do you see what's up underneath baby Jesus? You'll have to look very close. It's a barnyard animal. In fact, it's two chickens. And you'll see a horse. You'll see a cow. You'll see some shepherds. But there's something else I want to see if you notice. Remember me saying that the light was shining from the ceiling down on baby Jesus? There's something else up on the ceiling. In fact, there's a lot of somethings up on the ceiling. What do you see? Little angel faces are crowding the ceiling. Don't you know that it was a glorious, happy day, the day that Jesus was born, to where even the angels wanted to be present? The Salon saw this painting. They saw a Bible scene. They saw how well the colors were blended. They didn't see any brush strokes. And it made people think. And so, of course, this is one that they put into the show. Now we know of 3 different themes that we've learned that the school liked for their students to paint. But there's a 4th one. It's landscapes. Does anybody know what a landscape is? Well, if you guessed it's a painting of land, you're right. That's exactly what it was. Let's look at this one. This one was submitted to the school in 1775. It's called The Construction of the Road. When I first saw the name, I thought, well, that sounds kind of boring. But then as I went and looked at the painting up close, oh my goodness, it is the last thing from boring. What's happened is the king has asked that they build this road from town to town. And so the laborers, the workers, are out trying to build this road. But they don't have the machinery that we have today that would make it a little easier. They had to get all the pieces together and build it by hand. That means even digging up the rocks, carving in the rocks, and laying the rocks down for the road. If you look at this painting, you'll see on the right side, the side of the hill, where they're actually digging out the rock to help them build this road. As you come down the road a little bit, you'll see some very important characters. They're the ones actually on horseback, and they're kind of dressed up a little fancy. Those are the people that the king sent out to check on the progress of the road. So you'll see some men digging rocks. You'll see some men laying the rocks down on the road. Then I noticed there were some women actually there. That kind of surprised me considering it was 1775 when this paint was painted. But look at what the women have with them. They both have baskets of food, and one even has a big pitcher of water beside her. I guess that was snacks for when the workers got a little tired or a little hungry. There's one other thing that I thought was very cool about this painting. Right in the middle of the painting, you see a guy with a wheelbarrow. and he's tipped it up, and all this rock and dust is falling out. It's actually falling down the hill into the river. I loved how the artist, Joseph Vernet, was able to paint this to where you could see the little rocks, but you could also see the dust churning all around it. And one other thing I want to draw your attention to. Do you see the bridge in the background? It's a beautiful bridge, but on it you will see two, I guess you would call them cranes. Today, ours are all run by gas and hydraulics and levers, but those were very prehistoric type cranes. However, they had to have that. Can you imagine having to pull the rock up towards that bridge in order to make it? Somebody was pretty smart to figure out how to do that. And this artist was able to show France a beautiful landscape, but also how they had progressed industrially and how the workers worked hard, and yet how the king still would oversee things. This is a landscape, but it actually has some historical value too. Let's look at another landscape. This one, when I look at it, kind of makes me want to take a nap. Not because it's boring, it's not boring, but because it's so beautiful. It's called View at Narni. Narni was a town in the middle of Italy. And the artist, Jean-Baptiste Camille Corot, painted this to show what a lush and green and tranquil area this is. Can you see the people? There's some people on the left. They're kind of out, maybe for a picnic or a nice little stroll by the river. And there's another guy. Can you find him? Look very closely. It's kind of hard to spot. He's got one leg up. Do you see him now? Right. He's got his foot up on a big boulder, and he's gazing out at the beautiful river. When I looked at the river, I thought, oh, I'd love to take a little swim in that river. But if you look in the very middle of that river, you see kind of some white paint. That was the paint that Corot put down to make it look like the river was crashing up against some rocks. Don't really know if I'd want to swim in that part or not. And as you follow the river on down, you'll see another bridge, kind of like we saw in the last painting. But this bridge, I don't think you're going to go very far on this bridge. This bridge is in ruins. Yeah, Italy has a lot of areas like this. It's a very old country, and a lot of their architecture is so old that it's begun to crumble and to fall apart. And that's exactly what happens to this bridge. Look, you could start walking across it, but if you keep going, you're going right into the river. Corot did a wonderful job with this painting. He painted a gorgeous scene with the river, the bridge, and the people just relaxing. I think the school knew that guests would love looking at this painting because they would almost want to step into it and relax and enjoy the day. So far, we've learned that the school loves certain themes. In fact, we've talked about 4 of them. The first one was what? War scenes. That's exactly right. The second we talked about, kind of a hard word, it's pictures of people. If you said portraits, that's exactly right. The third was Bible scenes, and the last one we talked about was what? Pictures of the land, landscape. Very good. Well, there was actually 5 things that they loved to see their students paint and encouraged them to do so. And the 5th one was still life. What is a still life? Well, the best way I can describe it is painting something that's not alive and it's not moving. Let me show you a few. Here's one. If you look at it kind of quickly, you think, well, that's not all that great or all that impressive. But I want you to look at it a little closer. Look at how much detail the artist put into every flower, every petal, every piece of fruit. Remember how in the Bible scenes we looked at the light shining down from the ceiling? Well, on this one, the light is shining over from the left, and those white flowers are really picking up the light. But as you go to the back of that arrangement, of that still life, it starts to get kind of dark. In fact, there's some very nice fruit at the bottom right that you can see a little bit of. It's kind of sitting in the shadows. I can see 2 peaches. They catch a little bit of the light. But one of my favorite fruits almost disappears off the canvas, and it's grapes. The artist, Jan Frans van Dale, spent a lot of time on the detail of this one, on mixing the colors and not leaving any brushstrokes when he painted this. This was submitted to the school in 1810. Of all the pictures that I've shown you today, I would probably say this is my favorite one. One reason is because I love detail. Let's look at this one. It's called A Bouquet of Lilies and Roses. When I first saw it, I thought, okay, lilies, roses. But then I saw something else. It's kind of hidden. Let's look a little closer at the painting. We see a beautiful vase on the left-hand side, the light shining on it. We see the flowers, again, lilies and roses. Beautiful detail, beautiful blending of the colors. Look at what they're sitting in. They're sitting in a basket. To me, one of the hardest things to paint would be a basket. Look at every little fiber that's going through that basket. The artist, Antoine Bergen, was able to make this basket almost look like it has texture, like you could actually feel the little strips of wood that's going through. But those aren't the reasons why I love this painting. Look a little lower than the basket. Yes, it's sitting on a table. But someone has left the drawer of the table slightly open. And the artist has drawn it so that we can just peek in and see what's in the drawer. I see the key. I see the lock. But what's in the drawer? Can you make it out? It's one of my favorite things. The drawer is full of shells. I love shells. I'm kind of curious why the artist didn't put the shells up on the table, or why he didn't call it A Bouquet of Lilies, Roses, and Shells. Maybe he wanted to make it a little interesting for us. Maybe he wanted us to study his painting and see the little surprise in the drawer. I think that's the reason it's my favorite of all of them today. How difficult it must have been for those students to remember all those rules and regulations and try to paint a theme that their teacher was going to accept. But those students worked very, very hard. And the teachers began to get a little prideful. They began to really dictate what good and bad art was, because they knew that they were the ones producing, through these students, gorgeous pieces of artwork. The school made a decision. Every year, they had that art show, the one I was telling you about, the Academy of Fine Arts. And they decided, instead of just showing off all of our beautiful artwork to the other students here and the other teachers, why don't we invite people from the community in? We'll make it a nice exhibit for them to come, and then they will educate themselves on what really fine art is all about. So that's exactly what they did. They sent out invitations to all of Paris to come and see the beautiful artwork. It was a hit. The people loved it. They did this for many, many years. And then the school got another idea. Hey, instead of just using our students' artwork, why don't we invite other artists to submit their artwork along with our students? And we will have an even bigger exhibit for the people to see. Well, they did that very thing. They extended an invitation, and artists from all over Europe began to paint frantically to try to get their artwork into this exhibit. Something happened, though, that they didn't realize was going to happen. So many paintings came in that there was no way they could display them all. There wasn't nearly enough wall space to hang all of these paintings. And they also learned that not all of the paintings deserved to be hung in their exhibit. So they had to make a decision. They wound up getting a jury. At least that's what they called it. We would call it today, they got some judges. And they got a jury to come and judge the artwork. A lot of people on the jury were the teachers of the school. But the jury would walk around before the art show, and they would look at all the different pieces of artwork, and they would say, yes, that one can stay. No, that one's terrible. And they would pick the best pieces of artwork. That way, when the people came, they would see the greatest artwork in all of Europe. Some of the students were a little disappointed because theirs didn't get picked. But some other people were very excited. Even though they weren't a member of the school, they still got to display their artwork at the academy. It became such a big art show, they had to move it away from the school grounds. There just wasn't enough wall space. They decided to go to a very special place. It was a palace, and it was called the Louvre. There, they had plenty of wall space for the artwork. And they began to hang it in one of the biggest rooms in the Louvre. It was called the Salon. And so, that year, the invitation went out. Don't come to the school for the art competition. Come to the Salon in the Louvre. Well, you can imagine even more people showed up for that particular art show. It kept growing and growing and growing. Let me show you a few pictures of what that art show looked like 150, 200 years ago. Here is a pen and ink drawing of exactly what would happen right before the exhibit would open. As you can see, the paintings are hung from floor to ceiling. Now let me ask you a question. If you were a judge, where would you hang your favorite piece? Would you hang it near the bottom? Or perhaps at the very top? Or maybe right in the middle of the wall? Well, if you guessed the middle, you guessed right. They hung their favorite pieces right in the middle of the wall so that when the guest walked in, their favorites would be just at eye level and it'd be the first one that the people saw. The next picture is actually a photograph. It's a photograph of the judges judging the 1902 exhibit. See how they're gathered all around the paintings? When the curator asks, "Do you like this one?" they'll raise their hand if they think it's great. Or, as you see a few of those guys, they raise their walking stick. The judges actually did a pretty good job in picking out the artwork, because when the people came to see the art exhibit, they realized that the pieces of art were gorgeous.
I like that kind of artwork.
I do too, Gatsby.
No, I mean I really, really like that kind of art.
I really, really like it too, Gatsby, and I'm glad you like it. Well, the judges did a good job. And they picked beautiful pieces of artwork. And because they did a good job, people began to trust them. They thought that the judges knew what would be good and what would be bad. And so if a judge said something was bad, the people would just ignore it. It was hard on some artists. Some artists tried very hard. And they thought their artwork looked good. But if they didn't fit the criteria that we talked about, you remember the brush strokes, the detail, it being intellectually challenging, it would get kicked out. And it was hard on a lot of artists. In fact, there was a group of artists. This is where things begin to get a little discombobulated. A group of artists who had gone by all the rules that the Salon had said, had painted the way they wanted, and some of them had actually even had some of their pieces put up on the wall for the exhibit, decided that maybe the judges were a little off on their judging. Maybe there were pieces of artwork that were good, but weren't of landscapes or portraits. And who says that we have to blend the colors in smoothly? Who says that a brushstroke doesn't add some character to a masterpiece? And so they began to paint the way they wanted to. The Salon did not like it. And those artists pitched a fit. In fact, I'll show you a few pieces of artwork and let you be the judge. Problem is, we're out of time. I guess I'll have to tell you about these bizarre artists next time.
No, I want to hear about it now. I can't wait. I like it when things get a little crazy.
I'm sorry, Gatsby. You're just going to have to be patient, but I promise next time we get together, I'll finish the story. And have I got a story for you.